Hi, everyone. I'm Anthony Ruggiano, and I want to welcome everybody to Reformed Gangsters. And I want to thank Scarlett's Alibi for the music intro. I hope everybody enjoys it. Hi, everyone. My name is Anthony Ruggiano, and in 1988, I was struggling with addiction, and I went into a treatment center. I set up a helpline number, which is 855-963-2113. That's 855-963-2113. That number, phones will be manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you're struggling with addiction, or you know someone that is struggling with addiction, please call that number and let me help. I will be hands-on. I will be personally involved in the person's recovery. They will meet me. They will spend time with me, and I will help them live a life beyond their wildest dreams. Hi, everybody. My name is Anthony Ruggiano Jr., and I want to welcome everybody to Reformed Gangsters. And if you enjoy my content, please click the like button and hit subscribe and ring the bell. My subscribers are going up, and I appreciate it. And the comments are really really nice, and I appreciate the comments. They're all positive. I want to thank all my Patreon members. Become a member of reformedgangsters.com and get early access to my content and be part of the show. The Patreon members are the ones that pick the content, what we talk about. So, join on and ask me your questions, ask and get your Mafia history questions answered, to the best of my ability. Every week I take some questions, and, I got a couple of questions that people asked me from my show from last week. A lot of people are wondering if I ever saw Dom the Sailor again after the incident with us. And I did actually, but not in that kind of a setting. So there's a feast on Sullivan Street every year, St. Anthony's. It's that's like the Chin's feast. It's still there. And I saw him at the, he would be sitting outside the club, and I went to the feast one night after that incident. That's the next time I saw him. He was standing outside the club when I was walking through the feast, walking around the feast or around the neighborhood, because the feast is right in that neighborhood. That's their church there, St. Anthony's, which is my patron saint, my namesake. And I saw him, and, we just nodded, waved at each other, but we never really had any meetings after that or any conversations. I just would see him if I was around that neck of the woods. I would run into him, like I said, at the feast. But I never had no dealings with him before that. I never did business with him. I met him a couple of times before that with my father. My father would go over there for stuff, and he, that was his spot. That was his club. He ran that club. That club on Sullivan Street, the Chin's Club, was his home base. So that's it. I saw him once or twice after that, but we never had any really big conversations, or we never discussed what happened. It was just a mute issue. Other people want to know about Cookie and Tommy DeSimone and his wife Cookie, and my friend Robert Angle, who was dated Cookie for many years. What else could you say? Cookie was married to Tommy, and unfortunately, when Tommy was away, she had an affair with Foxy, who was with John Gotti, and we all know what happened to Foxy. When Tommy came home, he killed Foxy, and so on and so forth. And then Tommy disappeared, and Robert went out with her for many years. And, Robert had many, issues with her, and, and thank God everybody's, Robert and her lived through it. And, she has Tommy's daughter, who's a beautiful young lady. From what I understand, she looks a lot like her father. I think her name was Danielle. I believe her name was Danielle. I haven't seen her in many years. And then someone asked me about John Gotti's gay captain. I don't really recollect any gay captains. I mean, I don't know of any blatant gay captains. I'm sure there was gay wise guys. I mean, bisexual wise guys, I'm sure. I mean, but I never saw any of that. I mean, I never saw any of that. So I don't know much about that. And another question was about DB. So everybody knows the story about DB. DB was a major pornographer back in the day, in the 70s and 80s. He was probably actually the biggest pornographer in the United States. Unfortunately, he disappeared. He was murdered. Sammy the Bull talks about that often because he was involved in that hit, with for John. That was one of the hits that was one of the main conversations on the tapes from on top of the Ravenite that got John convicted and Sammy indicted and Frankie Loke indicted. I knew him. I didn't know him well. I mean, he used to tease me all the time. I used to ask him to take me when I was a kid. He would come in and out of the Ravenite. And a couple of times he came for dinner with me and my father and Tony Lee. We would go for dinner, Peter Luger's or whatever. And, he used to tease me and tell me he was going to take me to his studios in Jersey where they made the porno films when I was like 19 or 20. And I used to see him all the time going, when are you going to take me to the studio? And, he never did. He never did take me, but he always said he was going to take me, but he never did. He was ahead of his time. He made millions and millions of dollars. If he never got clipped when the internet exploded, my God, he'd probably be a billionaire now. I mean, because he had that industry, under his thumb because, he was a made member of the Gambino family. He's very close to Paul Castellano. And, that's the conversation that he disappeared because he didn't come in. From what I understand, he didn't show up for a meeting with John after John became the boss. And they took that as a slight. And I'm sure it had a lot to do with them taking over his porno business. There was a lot of money involved. But he was all right. He was a good guy. He was good to me. I got along with him. My father got along with him. Unfortunately, that's the life. That's the life. And he disappeared. So tonight, I'm thinking about what to talk about. It's funny because my friend Michael Francis put out a video the other day on his podcast, which is a very good podcast. I mean, I did his show. He talked about me and Sammy the Bull and Don Calise, who's a new comer to this genre, who's doing pretty well. I believe he was in Allen with my father because he says he was good friends with Anthony Bruno in Allenwood, and Anthony Bruno hung out. My father lived in my father's unit in Allenwood and ate every night with my father. My father cooked for them, and they ate together every night. So I'm sure Don had some interactions with my father in Allenwood, which I would love to talk to him about at some point. And he talked about people on this genre that are talking bad about us because they have nothing else to say. They have nothing really to talk about. They didn't do what we did. They weren't around with us, so they call you rat, stool pigeon, and, and all these names, and Michael made a great point of saying, that, nobody walks in our shoes, and his shoes are my shoes, or Sammy the Bull's shoes. Nobody walked in our shoes to make the decisions we made, and until they do, they shouldn't, they should not talk like that, and I agree with him. Nobody walked in my shoes. When I cooperated with the government, that was probably the toughest decision I ever made in my life. It took me over a year to do it. And sometimes to this day, it still bothers me. I still wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and I have to catch my breath because, it's just a crazy feeling, it was, and sometimes I even think, as crazy as this may sound, and probably people out there listening to this video that are still in the street, that are still in my neighborhood, that are still in the life, will probably agree with this. Sometimes I feel like my father's mad at me, because, of how he felt about informants and all that. That's why it was a really tough decision And for me, like Mikey Scars has a great line, there are no excuses, and there really isn't, there's reasons. The reason why I did it is, number one, is I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in prison. I didn't think that life was worth it. I didn't think the people that were out in the street were worth me giving up my life for. I already gave up 14 years of my life to that life. I already gave up watching my children grow up, So when I decided to cooperate, my father was dead, John Gotti was dead, Tony Lee was dead, and I just wanted to get away from it all, So those were reasons, I don't have excuses. And I did what I did, sometimes I don't regret it. I mean, sometimes, I miss the life. Sometimes I miss the action, I miss the money, I miss it sometimes, but overall, I'm now content. I never felt content, so I don't know, but we could go on and on and on and about that. But, Michael made a lot of sense. He's an intelligent guy. He's a good guy, and it comes from the heart. And, what he said, hit home with me, because that's the truth. Nobody should talk about anybody until they walk in their shoes. I don't talk about ill of people. Sometimes I feel attacked and I want to strike back, but I don't, so that's all I have to say about that matter. So, I'm thinking about, everybody wants to talk about John Gotti. I do these shows, the National Geographic, Netflix, it's always John Gotti. That's all people want to hear, is let the guy rest in peace. You know what I mean? Like, that's all they want to talk about, before there was John Gotti, there was Sonny Francis, Fat Andy, and Charlie Wagons, you know what I mean? Like, they were the names of the day when John Gotti was a little kid. Those are the guys that John Gotti and all of them, and Nicky Carrazza and Jeannie Gotti wanted to be. They wanted to be Sonny Francis. They wanted to be Fat Andy. Those are the people they wanted to see, because that was the Mafia. That was the men of respect. Those were the real gangsters in the neighborhood when they were kids. My father ran around with Sonny Francis when he was a kid. You know what I mean? My father's good friends, Larry Bacala, who was the Dash's son that was in Murders Incorporated, was one of my father's best friends, who was with Sonny Francis till the day he died, on record with him. So those were the names of the those they were around before Gotti, but everybody wants to talk about Gotti. But tonight I want to talk about, real quick, I want to touch on, so there's a lot of Gotti brothers, right? So there's Jeannie Gotti and John Gotti, who were gangsters, good guys. I got along good with them. Jeannie was always good to me. He was a funny bastard. John was, so it's these two guys who were the real thing. Then on the other side, there are two brothers, Richie Gotti and Pete Gotti. So now you got John Gotti and Jeannie Gotti and Richie Gotti and Pete Gotti. It's like night and day. And I was laughing before, because I really wish that Sammy the Bull was sitting next to me right now, because he would probably agree with everything I'm going to say about these people. Like, they couldn't be pimples on John and Jeannie's ass, Richie and Pete. Like, they had no business, even Pete especially had no business ever being in this life. He was a sanitation worker. He should have stood working with the sanitation. Everybody agrees with that. He became the boss probably because nobody else wanted to be the boss, because why would they want to be the boss? Because it's like walking around with a big bullseye on your back. The government's going to come after you morning, noon, and night. So, like, he was just got it because there was nobody else to give it to. And his brother Richie, who John on many occasions abused, and he had a, so the Bergen Fish Club was on 101st Avenue, and right around the corner on the side of the L, Richie had a cafe with a fireplace in it, and they used to have fireside chats in there. And I spent a lot of nights in there with John and my father and Tony Lee and Tony Roach and Jeannie and Angelo Quack. We spent a lot of nights in there drinking and laughing and talking, and they were playing cards. They used to light the fireplace up and talk about murders, and it was crazy. And Angelo and my father used to get all the gossip and all the information from Angelo Quack. He used to tell my father everything. I mean, like, everything, like, to the point where he actually told my father about how they murdered Tony Plate in Florida, who was a wise guy, who was O'Neill's co-defendant, which is a story I'll say for another day. Yeah, they were just not nice people, Pete. And I don't want to talk ill about the dead, but like they just weren't nice people. I spoke about Pete, the incident with Pete, about with the money, with the car. Another incident with Pete. So I'm going to talk about two incidents. I had one with Pete and one with Richie. So I had I took over a vending company. I took we had a vending company that was with us, and the guy used to give us an envelope once a month. He used to give us an envelope, and it was a pretty good vending company. Had a lot of gambling machines, and he used to rent, he used to rent machines off this guy off Irish Sugarman, who was with the Genoveses. There was wise guys involved from Jersey that with the Genoveses. They had a major distributing business with machines, vending machines, and he used to do business with them. But he was with us. This guy was with us. He was on record with us. Everybody knew he was with us. He was with my father and Tony Lee. We used to get an envelope from him and I used to service him. I used to, we were friends, and I would, he hung out with me and I serviced him. There was any trouble on his route, I was the guy that went out and took care of the trouble for him, for the route. So my father was in prison, and I get a call one day from the girl, the woman that ran his office. I get a call from her one day. She was like sort of like my spy. I get a call from her one day, and she goes, "Listen, I don't know what's going on, but Louis," this was one of the Genovese guys, "Louis is on the route collecting money." I said, "Louis on the route collecting money? What are you talking about? How is he collecting money? That's our route. What do you mean?" She says, "Well, listen, he's on the route right now, and he's got the keys to the machines, and he's collecting money." So now I'm in this bar, Mike's Bar in Ozone Park, with Mikey Gal, who's a wise guy, Tony's brother, another genius, another guy that had no business with, whatever. That's another story for another day. So now I'm ready. So I tell Mikey, "Listen, come on, we got to get on the route. We got to track this guy Louis down. I got to find out what's going on." And he tells me, "I'm not going on no route." So I'm walking out the door, and this kid, Chris, that stood with me, he said, "Come on, I'll come with you." So we jump in my car. P.S. We run into Brooklyn, and we catch this guy on the route. I jump out of the car. I grab him. "Louis, what are you doing?" I take the money. So we have words. We threaten him. We have words. I make him give me the money. I go, "Give me them." He goes, "Well, no, Stevie's selling us the route and he's giving me all this bullshit." I said, "Stevie can't do nothing. This is our route." I take the money off him. I tell him, "Go see who you got to go see," right? I take the money. I tell him, "Stay off the route. We're going to hurt you." My friend Chris put a knife up to his face, and, a whole big thing. So we get him off the route. I go back to Ozone Park. I tell Mikey, right? Mikey says, "All right, go." So now we got to sit down with them. I'm telling Mikey, we got to reach out to these guys in Jersey, because what's going on here, right? So he says, "All right, go see Pete." And now Pete's the captain at the time. My father's in jail. Tony Lee's dead, right? And Pete's the captain. So Mikey says, "Go see Pete." So I go to the Bergen Fish Club, and I go in, and I say, "Pete, I got to talk to you." So we go outside, we walk around the corner, and I tell him, "This effing Louis was on my route. He's with the Genoveses and And if I see him on the route again, you know what I'm going to do to this kid," right? Pete looks at me and he goes like this, covers his ears, and says to me, "I don't want to hear that kind of talk. I don't want to hear that kind of talk." Like he didn't want to get caught up in some kind of conspiracy or something, and he was covering his ears. I said, "Well, listen, I got to sit down with these people, but I don't want to go with Mikey Gal, because, Mikey Gal don't know them, but Ronnie One Arm knows them. Ronnie One Arm was a good friend of mine. He was a wise guy." I says, "Could Ronnie come with us too?" So he goes, "Yeah, Ronnie." So he gave me permission to go with Ronnie on the sit down with Mikey at Jersey. And as I'm walking away, he tells me, "You got your hands full, because them Genovese guys, they don't give up nothing." I said, "Well, listen, right is right and wrong is wrong. They're going to give me, they're going to not take that route." So anyway, we had to sit down, and they're claiming that they were partners with him, and I'm claiming no. So what happened was the owner was trying to sell the route from underneath us to the Genoveses, and he wanted to move to Florida. He wanted to sell the route without our permission, and we wouldn't have gotten in. But we would have never gave him permission to sell the route, and he knew that. We would have just took over the route. So he tried to go behind our backs, but they jumped the gun by sending Louis on the route to see the money, how much money was robbed. So anyway, to make a long story short, we sit down and we have a sit down, and they're claiming that they were his partner, which was a lie, but there's no way I could dispute it because the owner wasn't at the sit down. We wouldn't bring him to the sit down. So there was no way that I could dispute that he was partners. He wasn't partners with them. So the windup is the decision's made that we're going to go partners with them, but I controlled the route. I ran the route. They had no say in the route. I ran the route, and I did what I needed to do, and I ran the route. So we chased the owner out of town. We chased him. He thought he was going to get killed. He ran away. Matter of fact, I had to plead guilty to when I had to plead guilty to that, to extorting that company. And I went back and I told Pete what happened, and he was like shocked. He goes, "Oh my God, you're my hero. How could that you got to go partners with them and they don't give up nothing?" But the guy covered his ears. He didn't want to. I mean, like, you're supposed to be a gangster, like his brothers. When Jeannie would have gave me a gun, you know what I mean? Like Jeannie would have came with me, and like it's just what it is. So it all ties in. So now I got this route, and I got a lot of gambling machines, and I got them in all kinds of locations. I have them in bars, I have them in bodegas, I have them in after hour joints, I have them in number spots. I mean, I'm making crazy money. I'm making tens of thousands of dollars a week. Money's rolling in, and and I'm looking for new locations and this and that, and so there's a pork store on 101st Avenue on the other side of the L, on the corner, and I'm in there one day because the owner of the vending company who I extorted also had gumball machines and peanut machines that was still on the route. So I knew there was a couple of those machines in this pork store, which was, so Richie Gotti's club was on one side of the L, and the pork store was like on the other side of the L. So I go in this pork store one day because I knew the gumball machines were in there, and I go in there and I'm looking, and a lot of immigrants lived on that side of Woodhaven Boulevard, a lot of Italian immigrants and a lot of old Italian ladies and everything. And I walk in there one day, and the pork store's packed with all these old, like middle-aged and old Italian people, right? And he has like a back room, but you could like in the back, right? So I look, and so there are two Italian guys on there. So I tell them, listen, why don't you let me put a machine back there? We'll go half 50-50. Let me put a Joker Poker machine back there, see what happens. So the guy goes, all right, no problem. Yeah, go ahead. So I get the kid. I put a Joker Poker machine in the poker store. P.S. Now it's like, boom, it start make crazy money. I put another machine in, boom. Now I put a third machine. Now I have three machines back there. I got the guy making them sandwiches, giving them espresso, and and now I'm making 3,000-4,000 a week in this pork store, and the guy's getting half. Like, we're whacking up 3,000, 1,500 a piece, 4,000, 2,000 a piece. We're whacking up money, me and this guy. It's like these old Italian ladies thought they were in Atlantic City, like they were drinking espresso and eating sandwiches, and playing the slot. Put a slot machine back there. I had an eight line, a Joker Poker, and a slot machine I had. So they were loving it, right? All of a sudden, one day I get a phone call. Oh my God, you got to come here. I'm going to get killed. You got to come here right away. The guy's panicking on the phone, right? So I get in my car, I go to the pork store, and I look, and the machines are unplugged. I go, what's going on? He goes, oh my God, Richie Gotti was here. He's going to kill me. He wants to know whose machines these are. He wants to put his machines in here. You got to get these out. Richie's going to. I say, listen, I ain't getting nothing out, right? No, 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 Richie Gotti, you got to get these machines out. The guy's panicking, right? Now I'm steaming. I walk out of his pork store. I walk across the street. Richie, I go to Richie's cafe. I said, could you come outside? I got to talk to you. And me and him go at it, like nose to nose. Who the F are you? That's my spot. This is my he told me, this is my avenue. I said, this is your avenue. I said, that it says 101st Avenue. It doesn't say Gotti Avenue on that street sign. I said, it says 101st. What do you mean, this is your avenue? Who am I to go in a pork? That's a pork store. You know that even would you go in there to get a sandwich, and you saw he went in there to buy a sandwich, and you saw what was going on right away because was a greedy bastard. He don't know how to create anything on his own. So now the wheels started turning. He was going to put his own machines in there, right, or get some machines, right. And me and him are beefing. We're beefing. As we're beefing, the car pulls up. Who gets out of the car? John Gotti Jr. gets out of the car. Walks up, he goes, what's going on? I said, what's going on? I said, your uncle is a scumbag, and if he's lucky your father ain't, now his father was, I said, he's lucky your father's not in the street, this would never be going on, because one thing with your father, I said, right was right and wrong was wrong, and that's my spot, and now he goes, yeah, but you can't talk to each other like that, and he go, and so he calms us down, right, and he goes, all right, just come back here with Tony Lee. Now I got to go back so now I go to the Cafe Liberty. I tell Tony what happened. Now John Jr. now is on the panel of the family. It's him, Pete, and Nicky Carrazza are running the Gambino family. They had a panel. The three of them were representing John. Nicky, who my father made, Pete, and John Jr. So now I get Tony Lee. We go back to the Bergen. We go into Bergen, and it's me, Tony Lee, John Jr., and Richie. And we're sitting down. P.S. Tony Lee makes him my partner. I'm so irate right now. I am so irate, right? I walk out of the club. I go to, now I never argue with Tony Lee. I loved him. I go, how could you do that? How could you, this guy just raped me. How could you make this guy my partner? He just did it to appease Junior. He goes, oh, please, what's the difference? I said, what's the difference? That's my spot. I cultivated. I built the spot from nothing. Well, I got to give what are you kidding me? I said, now I'm irate. Now I go see my father. He's blowing his top. My father goes, how could Tony do that? Make you his pawn? He should have fought. But he just wanted to appease Junior. He didn't want to make no waves. We didn't know at the time he wasn't feeling well. He had stomach cancer, but we didn't know yet. So he just wasn't who he used to be at that point, but we didn't know yet. So anyway, now this balloon head, cue ball head is my partner, right? So of course, because he's a greedy person that doesn't know how to create anything, just like Pete don't know how to create anything. All they know how to do is take money off people and take money off people, right? He starts hanging out in the pork store, standing like this in the back, watching the machines to make sure like he's getting the right count. And he's watching the machines 1 week, 2 weeks. He's in there watching the machines, right? You know what happened the third week, right? I'll give you all the people out there watching this. What do you think happened the third week? Oh, the place got raided by the cops because Richie Gotti was hanging out in there. And he was under surveillance because all the Gottis are always under surveillance. And they said to themselves, why is this guy hanging out in that pork store every day? And they walked in and saw the machines. And the next day they came and they took the machines out. And that was the end. So then I went to see him and I said nicely, I said, are you happy now? Now we have nothing. I said, you happy now that you hung out in there because you're a greedy bastard? The place got raided. They confiscated my machines. Now we have nothing. Now he's not even in New York anymore. I heard he's living upstate. I heard like he ran away. He don't want to go to jail, I guess, anymore. So I heard he ran away. And I'm not saying these stories to start trouble. I don't want to hear, like them now. Angel has a thing on TV, online. And I wish her all the luck in the world. She used to be a very good friend of mine. I always liked her. I went to her wedding. She was very friendly with my wife, Alice. I don't want to get into a word war with her because I talk bad about her uncles. I'm just telling stories. This is my experience with them. They weren't nice people. Pete and Richie were not nice people. Her father was a sweetheart, and her Uncle Jeannie was a sweetheart. And even her Uncle Vinny, the younger one, I got along good with him too. We were friends. We were friendly, He had a couple of quirks just like me, but we got along good, me and Vinny. I have no issues with Vinny. We used to laugh a lot. He was a good guy, Vinny. But Pete and Richie, they weren't, and they were just greedy people that shouldn't have been in that life because they just were not nice people. My name is Anthony Ruggiano. Like I said earlier, Junior, thanks for watching. Please become a member, subscribe, join my Patreon, and don't forget about my helpline, 855-963-2113. If you need help with addiction, please call us. We're here to help. See you next time.